Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. I am so excited about this. In 2016, a landmark movie won Best Picture of the Year. After a bit of confusion, Barry Jenkins' beautiful Moonlight took home the gold and crowned Jenkins a household name director. Now he has returned with a follow-up to Moonlight that may, in fact, surpass it. Adapting the James Baldwin book, If Beale Street Could Talk, Jenkins has created a fragile, heartbreakingly beautiful story about love in the face of injustice. Let's take a look.
Pain with his fingers.
You ready for this?
Singing my life with his words.
I've never been more ready for anything in my whole life.
Killing me softly with his
We are drinking to new life. Tish gonna have Fonny's baby.
I hope it's a boy.
We're gonna have a baby. I'll have you out of here before then.
You sure about that?
You're not by yourself.
These are our children, and we gotta set them free. Gotta hold our baby in my arms.
I'm with you. You trusted love this far. Trust it all the way.
Everybody, please welcome the great Barry Jenkins, KiKi Layne, and joining us on stage right now, Stephan James. Hey, If Beale Street Could Talk. That was fun. I wish more guests would do that. That added a little spice to the mix. Thanks, man.
Had to use the bathroom.
Guys, congratulations on the film. It's so beautiful. It's an absolutely wonderful follow-up to Moonlight. It feels in some ways like a companion piece. I think that's maybe just because you wrote them at the same time, right? And maybe your head was in the same place stylistically, but it's all there. Does it feel that way for you?
I think a little bit. I think, both those films are about black families, black mothers in particular, who are just doing the best they can to raise their children. So I think in that way, yeah, there is some currency between the two films.
Now, cast around the two of you. You two are so perfect in this film. And KiKi, I know this is your first film, right, that you've done. And Stephan, you've been around for a little bit. We've seen you in some stuff, right? But
yeah, Stephan has played John Lewis and Jesse Owens before this, so yeah, he's done a few things.
But I don't know. I think sometimes it takes an incredible director, though, to really notice you and force audiences to take notice of you as well. And both of you have that in this film. And I've had a recent experience with a number of actors who've talked about working with great directors who say the best directors notice them and they feel it on set. Does it feel that way with Barry? I know he runs a loose set. Does it feel like he's really paying attention to everything that you're doing and capturing it and getting the best from you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Barry he's just so attentive to what all of us as individual artists needs. He just pays attention to, who we are as individual artists and caters to that and listens and pays attention to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with that. I think that, the thing I like the most about working with Barry is like he's sort of impromptu. Yeah. You'll have some moments where he'll see something and he'll feel something and be like, you know what, we're gonna do this shot. And it's just like, it keeps you on your toes, it keeps you on the ball. So it's a fun way to work.
And you get the sense of that while watching the film. Not that the film feels loose, but my favorite films are the ones where I can feel the filmmaker finding the movie through the script, finding the film on set, and then finding it while editing it. Nothing feels static. How do you work that way as a filmmaker when your movies have some shots in it that feel like they had to have been planned months in advance? The opening shot of this film is one for the ages, I think.
Yeah, but I think you have to create an energy where everything's possible. Because, for example, that shot actually wasn't planned months in advance, the opening shot. We were location scouting for the moment where the fathers are hustling to get the money to raise the bail, and that just happened to be across the street from this walkway. And so as we were scouting, I just walked off and started walking up this walkway, but the characters are in my head, so I saw them walking down it. And it was like, okay, next week we're gonna do this. So I think you have to be like really open and responding to both the actors and the environment.
Now, your budget for, you've had 3 movies now. This is your 3rd movie. Your first movie was $15,000, right? Mm-hmm. Shot in 15 days, $1,000 a day, essentially.
Yes, it was.
Your second movie, Moonlight, $1.5 million, about 26 days. With the success of Moonlight?
25 days, yeah.
25 days. Battle tested.
Give me back my day, bro.
Yeah. With this, did you have a little more money, a little more time? Did it feel like you did?
A little more money, a little more time. Yeah, this was 32 days, so not much more. But I think the movies the movies are made when they're made, you know? And I think sometimes you have to be, like, for example, in all three of the trailers, there's this moment of Stephan running down the steps of a subway station, and he's grabbing the bars, and the camera spins away. None of that was planned.
Impromptu.
None of that was planned. That was in the last 30 minutes of our first day of shooting. And so, yeah, you could have planned a whole day around that, but I think you make the movies in the time you have to make them.
How do you, this is gonna sound maybe like a silly question, but how do you get the confidence to do that? Because it takes an incredible amount of confidence to carry a movie set, to make a movie from beginning to end. Now, to get there and then be like, no, not that, we're gonna do this instead.
No, it's not confidence. This is where I get to shout out my film school, the illustrious Florida State University, where I learned most of the things I know about film. You have to do everything on set. You know, you have to grip, you have to boom, you know, you have to AD, cinematographer, everything. And so you understand the time it takes for anything to be pulled off. And so when I make a decision like that, I understand. I've already looked and, okay, we move the track here, and we back the train up, and I got to give Stephan the simplest lines I can so he can ingest them and come down the stairs. I think when you've fulfilled all the roles on set, you have a really, not accurate, but a reasonable expectation of what people can and cannot pull off. And I think when you get on set and the crew sees you appreciate what they do, they will, A, work harder for you, and they will trust that when you ask them to do something, they can do it.
You're not gonna get a lot of that, can't do it. Sorry,
You know,
can't do it.
I've been fortunate, man. I haven't gotten that too much. No, I haven't.
Now, one of the things that both in Moonlight and with this are the close-ups, these absolutely devastating, beautiful close-ups of you, of the two of you, whether you're talking or not. Often when you're not talking, you know, one of my, I think my favorite shots of the year outside the opening is near the end of the film, between the glass. It's this close-up of the two of you cutting back and forth, but the one specifically of you, Stephan, the color, the lighting is so beautiful, those yellow hues, it's really incredible. But I've heard that you also kind of pull those close-ups up impromptu and out of the spot. So how do you get comfortable with that as actors?
How do you get comfortable with that as actors?
KiKi?
Like look into the lens and just look here. How do you do that?
Okay. Oh my goodness, Barry, leave me alone. I called looking into the camera a black hole one time. He is not letting me live it down. But it's not a black hole. It definitely takes some getting used to. It's just, I don't know, it was very strange to just find myself having to live in these really emotional and often painful, you know, moments and just sit there with it and then just give it all. You know, acting is so much about what you're receiving from your partner. And so it was interesting to be in a position where I wasn't really receiving anything, but I'm having to give so much and live in these really, you know, painful things. And so the first couple times it was a little rough for me, but it got better. I think I got more comfortable. Did you notice me getting
I think
more
you were
comfortable?
extremely comfortable. I think, you know, we don't plan those shots. I mean, the scenes in the prison, those are what you call the Interrotron, is what Errol Morris uses to do his documentary, so they can see each other there. But the other
So
ones,
you're using an actual Interrotron there.
exactly. In the prison
Wow.
scenes, it's Interrotron. Any of the other director cameras, as KiKi says, they are looking into a black hole, which is horrible for me because a black hole absorbs light and does nothing but destroy it. And I feel like the light we're taking from the actors we're giving to the audience in that case. But yes, it does feel like looking into
So
a black
one time
hole
you
on
said a
set.
black hole and Barry
And
was like,
I would
"Do not
never
say
let her
that."
forget it. I'd never let her forget it. But yeah, in the prison scenes, they're looking into an Interrotron, so they can see each other. But I wanted them to look directly at the audience again. And so the only way to do that, because we built an actual set that reflected the tombs, was to have them staggered at the kiosk, at the partitions. But then it yields some unexpected results. You know, when the shot you're mentioning, when Stephan gets up and backs away from camera, we leave the focus shallow, and so he just drifts into this gorgeous yellow color, and he's moving like a panther. You like rocking left and right. I don't know why you did that, bruh.
Not sure.
You like rubbing your hands, you know? And it takes an effect because then you see KiKi, even though the Interrotron's in front of her, she looks up. Yeah. I don't know why you did that, because you couldn't see him because he went out of the image, and it was just the Interrotron there. But it's that thing where you get so immersed in what you're doing that now he is there and he's going away. It's one of my favorite moments. Good work, my dear. Good work.
You know, I have to say, since I saw the trailer and while watching the movie, I was just like, I just wanted to commend your focus puller, who looked like was doing an incredible, just so soft.
And I will say, on this format too, it's the Alexa 65, so the focus is even more or less forgiving. So yeah, we put him through the ringer. I gotta say, shout out to Nick Wynn, who also went to film school with me at Florida State. So shout out to him. Yeah.
Wow. So let's talk about why this book. You know, apparently you went to sort of write the adaptation for this, but you ended up writing Moonlight and this. But what was it about this Baldwin book specifically that made you want to adapt it? Because there haven't been that many adaptations of his work.
Yeah, there haven't been that many, which is unfortunate and is due to a whole host of reasons. But with this book in particular, I love that it captured these dueling voices of Baldwin. You know, one of those voices was just obsessed with love, romanticism, sensuality, and the other voice was just as passionate about calling out systemic injustice and the ways in which the American government, American society has played a large role in the degradation of the lives and souls of black folks in the history of America. And I think in this book, I found the perfect fusion of those two voices. You know, they say that a story is the best vehicle to translate an idea. I think a relationship is the best vehicle to translate an emotion. And so to take this emotion of what it feels like to be oppressed, you know, by either American society, mass incarceration, the judicial system, to take that and put it into the housing of a relationship, of a functioning family, it just moved me like nothing else.
To juxtapose the harsh realities and the harshness of the justice system with love.
I think their love
Absolute love.
their love is so pure. These two characters are soulmates that it ultimately, despite the joy they bring to each other, it's like the greatest tragedy, you know, because circumstances outside them are keeping them from this love.
How does that affect your idea of a scene when someone tells you that these two characters are soulmates? Because oftentimes the two of you are communicating with each other without lines. It's supposed to be in the eyes. It's supposed to be in the body movement. So how do you act as actors? Excuse me. Sorry. How do you behave as actors that makes you recognize that you are soulmates? Do you even try to think about that, or just listen to what you're told to kind of do?
I think that it just adds another weight of like responsibility to the story and to our characters. You know, KiKi and I were sort of put in this position where we didn't have a whole bunch of rehearsal time beforehand outside of the chemistry read. You know, that's really the only time we spent together before making this film. And, you know, you figure that you have to let down a lot of walls real fast and get comfortable with each other. And you know, luckily enough, we had Barry to help us with that process. But I think it's just an attention to the material and realizing that these guys are more than lovers. You know, they're soulmates and they're best friends.
Yeah, and one of the things that you have to do as actors in the film as well is there's really only, and we were talking about this in the green room, there's really only 3 scenes in the film in terms of a beginning, middle, and end scene. The rest is kind of montage that swirls around these scenes and tells the story through sort of letting out little bits of information. Most movies that you do, most TV shows that you do are just comprised of scenes. There's very little montage. So you have a lot to grab onto as actors. How did you do that in this? How did you make sure that you knew where you were in each moment of montage and shooting in regards to the story?
I mean, I had the book with me every day on set. So that was my main source of just keeping up with what does Tish know at what moment. So just to be sure that I'm not playing things that haven't actually happened, you know, even if we've already filmed it or, you know, so just trying to be attentive to that and just making sure that I'm using the book to, you know, get as much information about, you know, what my character might be feeling or thinking, even if, you know, because obviously everything can't make it into the script.
Yeah, the same thing. I mean, I think you definitely refer to the book. You know, the book was something that I think all the actors sort of had handy and were, you know, sort of going back and forth with it. But, you know, again, Barry was very, very helpful in terms of just, you know, helping us establish. I think it's really important that there's a lot to be said in this film without actually saying anything. And so those moments, you know, you were very careful with them as if, you know, they were lines, you know, to be said. I think that there was still messages that needed to be portrayed. And Barry likes to say that there are things in the performance that aren't necessarily in the film. And so, you know, you try to keep that sort of thing in mind.
You know, when it comes to the book was 1973, right? And
74, yeah.
74, excuse me. And the characters in the book are rightfully, I would say, even more conspiratorial in regards to the police, in regards to the justice system throughout the book. And I say that rightfully because, you know, the French Connection is referenced, and it's not necessarily conspiratorial, it's fact. But you have removed some of that from the movie, and I'm wondering if you thought that audiences in this period of time wouldn't necessarily know how to stomach beliefs about the justice system in that way or beliefs about police in that way.
No, it wasn't that so much. I mean, it takes 20 hours to read the book. It takes 2 hours to watch the film. I think when you're reading the book, you have all these moments of repose where you can sort of go down these sort of like back roads and really explore some of these things that maybe are more latent as far as the narrative propulsion goes. But in a feature film, you have to pick and choose. And as Stephan said, it's in the performance, but it's not in the film. I think a lot of that stuff is in the subtext of the movie, but it's not literally in the text of the film. I think even as the film is framed now with the 2 hours that exist, there's still some of that stuff that goes over, some people's heads in a way that is, I think, perfectly fine. You can still digest the movie, but it's one of those things of working with adaptation, especially a book as dense as this one. It's like only 200 pages, but there's so much in it. You just have to pick and choose. And so, yeah, some of that stuff I felt like was better to be left at, hey, I love this movie. Let me go watch. I love this film. Let me go read the book.
Which I did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is why you're asking the question.
Yeah. and you are right that the movie alludes to those things, but I was wondering if there was if there was a specific reason versus like, no, the illusion is enough. Which we kind of get.
I think so, and I also think too that the movie is primarily about the relationship between these two people and also the dynamics of their families. And to me, that was the forefront. That was the propulsion of the movie. And it was about striking a balance about how much of the judicial system, mass incarceration, how much of those things need to be in the text, and how much of it needs to be, as Stephan said again, in the performance.
Yeah. When it comes to your films, at least your last two films, the music is just, I almost can't imagine the movies without the music. What do you tell your composer? What are you showing him in terms of the music? Because with this, the way that the images match the music, there were scenes that I cried immediately, and there was nothing happening emotionally to make me cry except for the tone that you were bringing.
Yeah, I think you shouldn't be able to imagine the movies without the music because the music wouldn't exist without the film. Nick isn't writing scores independent of the performance or independent of the scene work. He's responding to the emotion that KiKi is giving, responding to the emotion that Stephan is giving. With this film, even more than the previous one, we actually developed the score as we were cutting the film, and we couldn't finish one before the other. I mean, literally, right up until Toronto, Nick was still working, and we were still fine-tuning certain things to the point that, we do these direct-to-camera close-ups you were talking about. And the last two in the film, which is Stephan and KiKi at the bottom of the steps, the opening of the film you referred to, we had those. They weren't in the film. Didn't know where they were going to go. And it wasn't until Nick saw those and then gave me a piece of music that I realized, oh, this is how we get to the ending of the film. So I think in a certain way, it's absolutely correct to say that you can't imagine the movie without the music, because I think the movie is what creates the music in a certain way. And Nicholas Bertel, who did the score for both Moonlight and Beale Street Could Talk, is just so in tuned with the spirituality of the characters, with the themes of the film. I think he does a really good job of capturing that, like in a soundscape.
Now, the other actors surrounding the two of you and your wonderful performances are also incredible faces. From brief cameos, I don't even necessarily want to name names of some of them because it's fun. I didn't know that some of them were going to be there, and it's hilarious when they appear on screen.
I mean, sometimes it's hilarious, and sometimes it's not meant to be hilarious, yes.
I realize that it's not meant to be. Well, one of them, I didn't even know it was him until the credits. And so that was good.
Which one? I'm curious.
The police officer.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So that was good because I would not want to laugh at that. That's not funny. But there was one man who I think it's a funny scene, so it's necessary.
It is a funny scene, and we riffed it in a way that we leaned into the humor of it. But yes, because at that point you need a breath.
And that's one of the scenes of the movie that I feel like you've expanded on what's in the book.
That's right, you've read the book. Yeah, he's talking about the scene. Dave Franco appears in the movie as a landlord. This guy named Levy. There's a sequence in the book that I was quite taken with, but I couldn't quite understand. And so between myself, KiKi, Stephan, and Dave, we kind of riffed out. And between location scouting, to be honest, kind of riffed out a way to sort of really connect that character with our main characters. And it came through this idea of mothers and the idea of nature versus nurture, and this nurturing being the thing that distinguishes us from people who maybe are less kind to us. So, yeah, it's one of my favorite moments in the film. And I think, as you said, these satellite characters who surround KiKi and Stephan, they all just did really great work.
Well, yeah, and I guess we should just talk about, the Regina King. She's just the absolute best. If she doesn't deserve if she doesn't get an Oscar for this, it's absolutely ridiculous. What was it like working with her?
It was great working with her. I'm gonna speed past the first part of that comment.
Sorry, I don't mean
it was it was awesome working with her. I remember watching 227 growing up, and so I feel like I've come of age along with Regina King in a certain way. And when you think of a mother, a matriarch, somebody who can be as close to their child generationally, but also be one generation ahead, and so can relate and empathize and all these things. Regina King was just this face that popped into my head. And I think she goes to a place in the film, especially when we give her the film essentially for 15 minutes, one of the scenes you're talking about when mom goes to Puerto Rico, I think she just shows these wells of vulnerability that is really just amazing.
Yeah, I've definitely watched Regina on screen before and been like, will you be my mom? How about
Exactly.
Regina? Come on.
See, I got to ask that question, and she said yes.
What was it like for you guys working with her and Coleman as well?
Working with them and just the whole cast was amazing, especially for me because the way you see these characters come around Tish is how this whole ensemble came around me as I was, experiencing all these new things and learning so much, very quickly, just like Tish. And so I'm so thankful to have had, Regina there, Coleman there, Steph there, just looking out for me and just being that genuinely supportive.
Yeah, it was a very sort of familial environment that we created with this, and I've worked with Coleman and I've worked with Regina before, and I really wouldn't rather tell stories with anybody else. Honestly, I wish I could make movies with these guys forever. Such a gem, Regina King. To be able to see just the trajectory of her career and just everything she's done, all the work she's done, and to sort of be recognized in this way now, it seems long overdue. So just incredibly happy to be able to have done this with both of them.
There's another face that makes a wonderful appearance in the movie, and that's Brian Tyree Henry. And there's a shot of you and Brian Tyree Henry in a doorway that I almost fell out of my seat laughing at.
Really?
It made me so
Okay, that's good,
happy.
bruh. That's good.
That
That's
scene
good.
that
That's
shot
how it
made me
should be.
So
I know exactly the shot you talk about. That's how it should be, bruh. Is this when y'all come in the door and y'all laughing? Yeah.
So, and I've been there with a friend that I haven't seen in a while, and you're just so excited, and it's perfectly captured.
And to start there and end up where Brian ends up 10 minutes later. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
He's exceptional. He's like exceptional. I'm the biggest Brian fan in the world. He came in for like 2 days.
One day.
What?
And just like he blew it out of the park. He's like the biggest Baldwin fan, and you could just tell the responsibility that he had taken upon himself to make sure that he was telling that story, because his character is so important. That moment is so important. I feel like you talk about black love, which is a big theme in this book, and in this film. That's one of the biggest moments where you get to see that, like black brothers loving on each other.
That brotherly love.
Yeah, that brotherly love, loving on each other and being vulnerable with each other. And Brian Tyree is literally like the best in the world. So shout out to Brian.
Was that another shot that you just kind of picked up when you were with him? Were you just like, get over there and let's see how this goes?
No, we knew we were going to pull them through the door, but that was an experimental day where we were using 2 cameras, and the energy between Stephan and Brian was so potent that I didn't want to intellectually have to cut between them. I wanted them to pass the energy back and forth. So after we had done the entire scene, basically, we took one camera out, put it on a slider, and said, okay, let's do it again. And now we're just going to start panning left to right, panning from person to person, so that the energy is passed to one man, and then that man takes the energy, changes it, and passes it back. So that was a day where, again, you guys could have been like, we already did the damn scene, we're not doing it again. But it was like, no, but I got it figured out now, trust me. And they trusted, and now it's one of my favorite scenes in the film.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful scene in the film. As we talked about before, some of the stuff has kind of been changed, as an adaptation should do. It's in no way an affront or an offense to the original material. But some of the ways that you've changed it has made it so that the story still kind of, even though it's still set in 73, still very much works right now. Was that your intention going into writing the script? Did you see that maybe this part of this book wouldn't necessarily translate in the best way to right now, or it would at least take people out of thinking about this moment as well?
I kind of took that out of my mind in a certain way. At the very beginning of the process, I thought, if you make it present day, it'll be much more affordable to shoot, because then we could point the camera anywhere. Just the logic side of my production brain. But then I realized Mr. Baldwin was so wise and so prescient that the most powerful thing to do was to allow everything to remain set in the time it was published and the time it was written, just to show how pervasive these problems are and how they've somehow been allowed to persist.
Let's get some questions from our audience.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. So I saw the film at the Apollo, and let me just say that I've never seen anything as revolutionary as and unapologetic as the way you perceived Black love on film.
Thank you.
Thank you. So back at your afternoon interview for the New York Film Festival, you you went on about the prevalence of the interior voice and how it is our job as filmmakers and writers to make sure that voice is visually sound and orally sound. So I wanted you to reiterate on that idea and how you were able to reflect that into this film.
Yeah, I think part of it was entrusting the actors, like KiKi said and Stephan said as well, I wanted to embrace the text, and so there's so much interior voice in the novel, because literature is a much better vessel for that stuff, that I felt very comfortable with them bringing to set. And I think those things make their way into the performance. As far as the orally sound, I'll speak to the sequence that Homeboy was talking about. I'll call everybody Homeboy. My bad, bro. That he was talking about, which is the scene with Brian Tyree Henry and Stephan James. There's a moment where this Miles Davis song plays in the background. You've seen the film. And as we introduce score, we take that song, and now you're sitting in an auditorium just like this. The speakers all around. So instead of turning that song off, which you normally do when you introduce score, we took that song, and I wanted it to feel for the audience the way it feels for the characters. And so we start panning it around the room, and reverb, it comes in, it comes out, and that to me is helping orient you guys, radical empathy. Now you're hearing things the way the characters hear them, as opposed to just being a participant, a passive participant in an audience. And I think when the characters look you directly in the eye as well, again, instead of being a voyeur outside, the camera's always here, now the camera's here. And who's the camera? You. And so I think in that way, you can really use the tools of the process to actively engage the audience so that you activate their empathy.
Thank you so much.
Did I make a face when you called me homeboy?
No, you did. But,
Okay, because in my brain, I was going, Barry Jenkins, call me homeboy.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't take it any kind of way, man.
Not as in the positive way that I took it immediately.
No,
Made it
that
about
was the way
me.
you should have taken it. That's the way you should have taken it.
Speaking of internal voices, KiKi, you do such an amazing job of presenting this woman who is incredibly strong, but also very wounded when we first meet her and struggling with a very real issue. And it's such a layered performance in the way that you have to move from strength to kind of fear, and how you're, especially the scene with the families and where you go from the beginning of that scene to the end of that scene. Can you talk about crafting that with Barry?
Oh man. I mean, the biggest thing for me was just paying attention to everything that Baldwin was giving me in the novel, because there's just so much more of the way that Tish is thinking and feeling about everything. But in terms of working with Barry and developing all of that, he really just encouraged me to trust that I was doing enough, because I definitely had moments of questioning. I'm like, is it too small? Is it actually being communicated? I'm feeling these things, but they still... So there was a lot of that back and forth and just questioning myself. And so the biggest thing I received from Barry there was just trusting that I was communicating those things. It was enough, and just trusting that, I was really letting these circumstances hit me, and that in and of itself would, allow those real emotions and feelings to come out just by letting everything that Tish was experiencing in.
Barry, did you have the book on you while you were shooting as well? Did you refer back to it?
No, I didn't. For me, that was probably not a good idea, because then I would want to bring all these things back in. And so for me, when I'm on set, it's all about what's in front of me. Even when it's an original, like on Medicine for Melancholy, my first film, once I get to the set, the script kind of goes out the window. I mean, I hope the words end up the same way, but it's not the most important thing. Most important thing is what's in front of me. So no, I did not have the book with me on set.
When right after Moonlight, I think a lot of cinephiles were referenced Wong Kar-wai in terms of your influences. I saw a little bit of it in the film as well, but you're definitely your own man and doing your own thing. And I'm wondering if there was any specific influences going into this movie, anyone that you were thinking of, or now that you watch it, you go, oh yeah, that's in my DNA.
Yeah, it wasn't cinematic influences for this one. It was more still photography from the era, like Roy Decarava, Gordon Parks. But it's interesting, this thing of DNA. I sign autographs now because people want my autograph, but I don't
We get it, Barry. We get it.
Well, I know, but I don't like my handwriting. And then I was thinking about it. I was like, why don't I like my handwriting? And I was like, I don't write in cursive very much. And I remember when I was taught cursive, it was by my third grade teacher, Miss Pamela Gilzo. And I write like her. So even though when I write, it's in my own voice, my literal handwriting is written in her hand. So the very first films I started watching when I wanted to become a filmmaker was Wong Kar-wai, Claire Denis, Jean-Luc Godard. So even though I'm making films in my own voice, there's no doubt that the way I write with images is sort of the DNA of it is rooted in their hand. And so I think it's always going to be a part of it.
Next question.
Hi, how are you guys? I saw the film actually at NYFF. I didn't get to see it at the Apollo, but I did see it at the Encore
The
screening.
Apollo screening was dope, bro.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
it was
missed it. I'm
dope,
so
bro.
sorry.
FOMO, bro. FOMO.
Yeah, I was trying to look for it, and then it was just sold out.
I'm just messing with you, man. Thank you for seeing the film, bro.
But anyway, I just really wanted to maybe you guys could just talk about a little bit more of the score as well. I know you guys kind of elaborated on it as well already, but I just really wanted to like talk about more of there was a lot of movement in the scenes in the film, and it kind of really coincided with the music. And I feel like Nicholas Brittle did like just such a fantastic job. Honestly, one of my favorite scores of the year. So maybe if you could just maybe elaborate more a little bit on that.
Yeah. Just real quick. We started off. My first instinct was it needed to be jazz, like a lot of horns. That I wanted that to be the base of the score. And Nick started out working that way, but then as we watched the film, we realized that something about this love demanded strings. And so we started out by writing things, orchestrations for brass, but we were playing them with strings. And then by the end of the film, it flipped on itself, where we were composing things for strings, but playing it with brass. And so that was one just natural evolution of the score. But I think what really starts to happen is, you watch the actors and they give a certain energy. And if a piece of score works really well with Nick, what he'll do is he's not afraid of being totally transparent with me. He will send me every stem in that score. Because maybe something that's like the 8th most important in this track, I go, oh, but now this makes me feel this thing in the 3rd act. Now it's the most important piece in this track. In that way, all the music starts to talk to each other. The first time they make love is this really lush piece of score called Eros. That same piece of score is played when the scene between Stephan and Brian Tyree Henry descends on itself. It's the same piece of music. And so this thing that's about joy and birth has now been corrupted by the circumstances to represent despair and death. The same thing when Coleman is holding KiKi in the kitchen. There's a piece called Storage, which is, we used all these terms for different phases of love. And then when Mama gets to Puerto Rico, when Sharon arrives, it's the same track, and it starts out hopeful, but as she's putting on the wig, it descends and descends. So again, it's not outside the movie, it's not intellectual, it's an emotional response to what's happening on screen. And Nick is so dope about doing that, while also providing an oral soundscape that is very moving and evocative.
Next
Are you a musician, Brad?
No, I just really love the score.
All right, cool.
Next question. Right here.
Hi. So I'm currently a film major over at NYU, and while I'm learning how to direct and make films in the classroom, I was wondering, as somebody who's been in the industry, what sort of advice you could give to us aspiring filmmakers?
I can't give you advice about the industry. I know so little about it. I'm like still fumbling around trying to figure it out myself. But what I will say is, on this film, The First AC, 2 of the producers, the cinematographer, both the editors are all people I went to film school with. And so I think while you point it that way, NYU must be close by. So it's right there. So while you're at NYU, I think you got to look for your tribe and look for your clique. And as you are developing and as you are learning, you got to like click up and and develop and learn with those folks, because eventually, my first film, as you said, was made for $15,000. Every single person on that 5-person crew was somebody I met, not at NYU, but at FSU. So I think don't worry about the industry right now. Just try to build relationships and find people who love the things you love and who believe in your voice.
Next question.
Yes, no problem. This question is also for Mr. Jenkins. This film, as well as Moonlight, are adapted works. Your first was an original. I'm curious to know if there's any differences or similarities when you approach both scripts, and if you're working on something original again in the near future.
Interesting question. So I think with an original, I doubt whether or not the writer's any good. With an adaptation, I know the writer of the source material is damn good. So it's like I'm cheating. Terrell Alvin McCraney is a genius. A MacArthur genius. James Baldwin is a genius, a genius period. So I think in a certain way, it gives me at least a more solid foundation to work from when I'm working on an adaptation, because there's so much in the source material that is rich. At that point, it's almost like editorial, and not so much pure creation. And it activates the visual side of my brain. Hopefully, I will get back to creating original screenplays. I'm working on an adaptation of Colson Whitehead right now for Amazon, The Underground Railroad. So I'm still using this PlayStation cheat code, the Easter egg from the original PlayStation, where find me an awesome-ass author with a dope piece of material and let me.
You're doing an adaptation of Underground Railroad, Barry?
I am.
I don't want to find that out on camera. That's amazing.
But you know what? I'll say this though, bruh. People think of adaptations as a dirty word. And I'm not comparing myself to this filmmaker at all. However, I don't think Stanley Kubrick ever wrote an original screenplay. I want to say every film he did was an adaptation. They're totally different mediums. So I think there's nothing wrong with taking something rich in one medium and then taking it, and not just translating it, but like really taking it and giving it a whole new life in another medium. So I got no problem working adaptations, bruh.
Was The Killing an adaptation? Was that a Jim Thompson novel?
I think it might have been an adaptation of either. It was a novel,
Thompson was
but
on the
also
script,
I don't think Kubrick made the first version of The Killing. There's like multiple versions of it, but I'm not sure. Twitter, don't jump on me about that. All right.
But that's amazing that you're. This movie's incredible. It's amazing that you're doing the Underground Railroad. Is that a series or a movie that you're doing?
That's a series. You know, it's one of
series.
the really lovely things about the time we're living in right now. You know, you could take the story, and the story dictates the format. It needs to be told that. And so that one's going to be. We're going to go on the course full journey for 9, 10, however many hours. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. My last question for you about the making of this and your process, because I think it's fascinating. You know, the script we said for this has really 3 scenes in it, and then a lot of that is montage. And I'm curious what that looks like on the page and how you present those pages to financiers or other people who normally are looking at a script that consists of scenes. I mean, we always talk about screenwriters as like the Sorkins and stuff who write.
I've got the worst answer.
Oh yeah?
By the time this was presented to financiers, I had an Oscar, so it didn't really.
That's an honest answer. That's good.
Now, as far as the Baldwin estate goes, then it is a conversation about really describing how I think
they hadn't seen Moonlight, right? When they
had only seen Medicine for Melancholy, my first film, and to me the reason why the film is structured the way it is because it's meant to reflect her frame of her consciousness, you know, her point of view, and to me when you get into like the mental, like the mind, it doesn't work in a straight line, you know. Like in this audience, some of y'all I've had the whole time, but some of y'all I haven't. And your mind went this way and that way. I think a film should be allowed to do the same thing. So having these 3 bedrock sequences, to me that was enough. And then you can surround it with this montage that's meant to reflect the way the human mind drifts into different states of consciousness.
Yeah. Congratulations on the film. It's so beautiful, incredible work by the both of you and the whole cast, and another great film, Barry. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Ray.
It's a wonder to watch your work. The film, If Beale Street Could Talk, opens December 14th. Everybody give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.